Adjourn our meeting of the board. Is there a second?
You're doing what?
I'm closing that myself. Our meeting of the board. Before we go into.
Closed session.
No, we did that.
What do you do?
Just adjourn.
I'm confused, but okay.
Right, before we go, I'm adjourning the meeting of the board before we go into closed session. All right,
So just for
record
clarification, board members, so the meeting that you're currently in now is just a regular board meeting. That's how you're able to enter closed, exit closed, so you need to adjourn from this meeting to be in your regular meeting.
Thank you, and I've done it. Is it really clear? You got it.
First, second.
We're good. You understand, Mr. Shaw?
It's a long process.
We're good. All right, I'd like to call the September 30th committee meetings of the Nash County Board of Education to order at this time. The first committee that will be convening is the Administrative Services and Operations Committee. It will be led by Dr. Chavis this evening. Dr. Chavis?
Good afternoon. I would like to call to order our Administrative Services and Operation Committee meeting. And we'll first open with a roll call. Franklin Lamb?
Here.
Zach Gray? Is he online?
Yes.
Zach Gray? Evelyn Bullock?
Here.
And myself, Donovan Chavis. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Let it be known by sign of aye. All opposed, the same sign. That carries. And now we'll look at our next item on the agenda, 21st Century Community Learning Center Grant. Ms. Morris?
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Ellis. We submit for your review and approval a contract with the Boys and Girls Club of the Tar River Region to provide after-school programming as part of our 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant. The contract will cover staff, field trips, and all administrative costs associated with the after-school programming at 4 sites. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? Is there a motion to take this to the full board?
Motion to take this for the board.
Second.
Second. All in favor, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
Mr. Gray?
Here.
All opposed by same sign? And I'm gathering, I can't hear him or see him, but I gather that carries. Is there any further business to be discussed this evening for this committee? Does anyone have any additional? If not, I make the motion that we adjourn.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr. Chavis and Mrs. Morris. The next committee that will convene will be the policy meeting. Ms. Bullock, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to call the Policy Committee to order. Mr. Gray, I would like to check our quorum for today. Mr. Gray? Dr. Washington?
Here.
Mr. Edwards?
Here.
And I'm here. We do have a quorum. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve our minutes from our last meeting?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve our minutes from our last meeting. Are there any questions or is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. The Next item on our agenda, we have two policies tonight. The first policy is policy number 4400. And I call on Dr. Farrell.
Good evening to the members of the board. We have policy code 4400, attendance. And in your information, you have the Nash County Public Schools adopted policy for 4400, which was last revised on March 6, 2023. And the particular item that we'll be addressing was first put in this policy on September the 9th, 2021. You also have a copy of the North Carolina School Board Association model policy. What we're asking, if you look at the Nash County Public Schools policy adopted version, if you look in the first section, third paragraph, it says to be counted present, a 912 student must be in attendance at least 2/3 of a class period. All K-8 students must be present at least 2/3 of the school's instructional day to be counted present for the school day. And then if you go down to letter A, attendance records, and you look on the number 1, in reference K-8 students will be considered in attendance if present at least 2/3 of the instructional day on site in the school or at a place other than the school attending an authorized school-related activity. 912 students will be considered in attendance if present 2/3 of each class period on the site or in school or at a place other than school attending an authorized school-related activity. We need to change the 2/3 to 1/2 to be in a line with our SASSA, which is the school board, state school board's policy, which states that students must be in attendance at least 50% of the day in order to be counted present. So we had a standard that was a little higher than that of the state, and so that we are not possibly having a loss of funding, we need to make sure that we are aligned with what the state policy says.
Are there any questions for Dr.? If not, then we'll move on. Thank you, Dr. Farrell. One question for you, though.
Yes, ma'am.
Since we need to be in alignment with the state policy,
Yes, ma'am.
do we need to waive the 30 days on this, or can we do the actual?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for
Regular
bringing it up.
procedure.
Yes, ma'am. We need to waive the 30 days, and we would change in the places where it says 2/3 to 1/2, 50%.
Okay. Well, then we'll stop here before we go on to the next policy. Is there a motion that we approve the policy changes in 4400 from 2/3 attendance to be counted present for the day to 1/2 attendance to be present for the day to align with the state policy?
Right here, oh wait.
If I could quickly ask, so this would be the approval from the committee to the full board for next
Right.
week, not to be effective tonight. which is
Right.
movement
It
from-
will be hopefully effective at our next board meeting.
So to make the recommendation for next week.
The board approval, the committee approval to recommend to the board to approve. Did I not say that right?
You did.
No.
I'll restate it. I make
Alright.
the motion that we, replace, the current wording to read 1/2 or 50%, to be recommended to the full board, and, to waive the laying on the table of 30 days, at the next board meeting. Are we good? For the record, alright.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved in, are there questions? It's been moved in second that we recommend to the full board approval for policy 4400 with the change of 1/2 per attendance per to be counted 1/2 of the day to be counted present, versus the two-third, presence, to be accounted for being present for the full day as, outlined by the state policy. If there is no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you, sir. The next item on on our committee, meeting tonight is policy 2130. And I ask you to go down to, section D. If I could pull up my policy here. I can't get it up. So if you would, please. D, yes. Right there. The second paragraph, board members should submit requests for reimbursement along with the supporting documentation of the expenses within 30 days of incurring the expenses. The reason this policy is on the agenda is several board members have asked that we look at that 30-day time period to see if we cannot agree to extend that time from 30 days to another time. I would suggest that we change it to be required to do the policy quarterly. Is there any suggestions, any discussions on this?
Just one.
Yes.
To be in addition to a day frame, have like a minimum amount of money for the expense voucher. And the reason I say that is some folks may not incur as much as others during the quarter, and it still may not be, a good stewardship to still submit one if they don't have enough money on their expense voucher even at the end of the quarter. So I would go with adding it, or at least meeting a minimum of $50 as an example. That way, the cost it takes to process a voucher.
Any other comments?
I would be in favor of supporting, quarterly and a minimum dollar amount for the simple fact that you don't wanna cut a check if it's not what the paper is printed on per se. So, if we could arrive at a minimum dollar amount and quarterly, I would support.
The only issue that I have with that minimum dollar amount to make sure that you don't go over the minimum dollar amount, I would think you would still need to go through the process of filling out the form. That's my first objection to it. My second, to know that you are not over $50, you would have to go through the steps to make sure you're not. My second objection to that would be that longer than a quarter. Suppose you don't think you've gone over $50 for 6 months. Then that leaves the field open for you to have forgotten what you did, and for you to be able to produce documentation if necessary for such a long period of time. I would recommend the quarterly report, and I would even go as far as to having it done by a date certain that next month, so that we don't go through the whole month. Say the quarter ends in March. I would not want someone to do the report the last of April necessarily. So I would suggest perhaps we do it maybe the 15th, by the 15th of the month. But I am not in favor of doing it with the exception of $50 or less. Any discussion on that?
Ms. Bullock, can I?
Yes,
I'm not in
sir.
the committee, but I totally agree with you. I think it's simple, just if you do just a quarter report, it's straightforward, it's easy. The minimum amount, you gotta track up. If you got $50 or $25, all you're gonna quarter, you only want doing it one time. So why make something simple complicated?
Can I
No.
make a comment?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Just remember, the auditors, when we were having some of these issues, was at the end of the year, if some of this stuff is still floating, so I just would ask that we have a cutoff date that I can get with Ms. Sanders to make sure that when we close these books, we don't have these reimbursements floating, because that's gonna cause an exception on audit. So I think that's why in the beginning, these were done at the 30 days to cut them off. And I think probably your May or June deadline, probably your June was probably the 15th or something, so it didn't interfere with us closing the books. So just make sure the last one is,
If you did it quarterly, you do it.
If I could piggyback on that, this policy and this timeframe are consistent with the NCSBA model policy. The intent of this, I believe it's consistent also with the timeframe that your staff have to submit reimbursements for their travel requests.
correct.
And really, this policy is designed to establish sufficient internal controls. So my suggestion would be, it sounds like there's a desire to explore this and to see if there's ways to extend that time frame or place other requirements or criteria around it. I do know there are several boards that have changed this, and one option would be to delegate or to direct staff, Dr. Ellis, to consult with the board attorney and to bring some options back to the board to consider, to make sure that we still have those sufficient internal controls, we still avoid end of year audit issues, while also presenting you with maybe some different options for language.
Yes.
I have no problem with that if that's the consensus, excuse me, I can't talk tonight for some reason, consensus of the committee. But I would say one thing more to what our attorney just said, and that is in December, usually school is just about closing, and we do very little after the 15th of December. So if we kept the 15th date, then that would give staff time to prepare whatever a reimbursement is required, as well as meeting the deadline for the report to be in. If while you are talking and deliberating on this subject. Okay. Yes,
I
sir.
just, on behalf of a few of us that have talked about it, I just wanted to ensure that we were just being good stewards of our own money and not cutting a check that was costing the board more than what the check was worth. That's all.
All right. So then we will table policy 2130 for tonight and allow our attorney and the superintendent and his staff to discuss it. I would like, as chair of the committee, to be a part of that discussion before you come up with a recommendation to the board, if you don't mind. Thank you. Is there anything else to claim the attention of the policy committee? If not, I declare the policy committee adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. All right, the next committee that will convene is the Student Support Services and Operations Committee, Mrs. Thomas Bullock.
Good evening. At this time, I will call the Student Support Services and Operations Committee to order. I will start with roll call. Dr. Chavis,
Here.
Mr. Edwards,
Here.
Mr. Jenkins,
Here.
Mr. Sharp,
Here.
and I am here. I will start with the minutes from August 29th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please show by the vote sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, and it is approved. So we will get into the action item first. We have just one action item, one item for information only. So at this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Farrow.
Thank you. So I'm here tonight to present the SRO contracts, one for Rocky Mount PD and one for Nash County Sheriff Department. Wanted to highlight a few important facts about money that we would be receiving from the state. One is the state has allotted $58,480 or per high school to go towards SROs. We have 6 high schools that we are counting in that, which would equal to $350,880. We have also completed the school safety grant, asking for 7 elementary SROs and 4 middle school SROs. That grant would pay $44,000 per SRO, which equals to the amount of $484,000. We have not heard back yet from the state about the school safety grant. We feel good that we will receive that grant, the things that the state has asked us to have in place, such as rave, such as say something. We have our MOUs with the law enforcement agency, those types of things, the things that count towards you getting points, they call it, for approval towards the grant. So we feel good that we will receive the grant. We've received it in the past, and that total amount equals up to about 900. I didn't total it up, but it's about 900 some $1,000 when you add those 2 pots of money together. The MOU for Nash County Sheriff Department, we are saying that the contract should not exceed in paying more than $900,000, and for Rocky Mount Police Department, it should not exceed in paying more than $800,000. When we look at last year's numbers, I was able to get those numbers today. When I looked at those numbers, last year we paid $630,000 to Rocky Mount Police Department. We paid $587,000 to Nash County Sheriff Department for SROs. The thing to keep in mind is that neither one of those agencies were fully employed in terms of having an SRO the entire school year. In many instances, we had SROs where they were coming in off duty, working to fill the place where we had vacant SROs. It seems as if this year that we were fully staffed at the beginning of the school year with Rocky Mount Police Department. There was a situation where we ended up losing one. We have oral boards this week where we hope to have a person in place by the end of this month, which would make Rocky Mount PD have filled all their vacancies. Nash County Sheriff Department at this point is working with 3 vacancies. So the reason I bring that up is just to keep in mind that although those numbers fall well under the numbers that we have laid out, if we have a fully staffed Sheriff Department for SROs, a fully staffed Rocky Mount Police Department for SROs, I believe those numbers will be slightly higher. And I think the $900,000 for the Sheriff Department and $800,000 for Rocky Mount Police Department puts us in a good place where we would not have to come back to the board to have those numbers changed. Each month, Rocky Mount Police Department and Nash County Sheriff Department sends over their reimbursements. And there's line items for each officer that has worked and what we are paying them. It's checked by our finance department. They then send it to me. I sign off on it, and then my finance department makes payment.
Okay, do we have any questions? All right, so at this time, I will entertain a motion to accept the presentation from Dr. Farrell to go before the full board.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please show by the vote sign aye. Any opposition? Okay, it is approved to go before the board for approval. Okay,
Ms.
and then,
Thomas Bullock,
yes,
there was one point that I forgot to mention. This is the first year that we are having an SRO staff full-time at the early college. And so that would take care of early and city, but there's one SRO that will be staffed there full-time. That's for the early college and city high school.
okay, thank you so much, I appreciate that. So at this time, we can go ahead with the transportation update. And it's for information only.
So I'm kind of going to give a recap of what I did last month. Just going to give some updated numbers. On this first slide here, we still have about 7,297 students currently routed on buses. Now, that doesn't mean that's the number that's riding, but that's the number that we have routed on buses. Since the beginning of the school year, we've been able to remove 290 students from bus routes. We have 8 students earlier today, and maybe more now, but there were only 8 students in our workflow who needed transportation. And those were for the various reasons that you see there. And requests for transportation, they're coming in daily. So as they come in, the transportation department is working to try to get students on buses as quickly as possible. Bus drivers, so the number of drivers working both AM and PM. At the start of the school year, we had 96. We're now down to 94. We lost 2 over the past couple of weeks. Number of drivers that work either AM or PM, we're now at 10. We were down from 13 at the start of the school year. Still needing about a total of 124 AM and PM drivers to meet the transportation needs of the district. Number of sub-drivers, we're still sitting at 3. And buses currently without drivers is about 24. The 15 new buses that I told you about, we were hoping to have them on the road today, but then we were out because of inclement weather. So that kind of botched our plans there, but we will have them on the road this week. 9 of them will be put on the road this week for operation. The other 6 are still being outfitted with our GPS systems, our cameras, and our radios. We still have 11 buses that are designated as spare buses. We have 134 route buses, and 17 of those are being parked buses that can be used as either spare or routes if needed. So there are currently 21 TAs that need to go through the classroom portion of the bus class. We have 9 TAs and 2 other school employees who passed the classroom portion the last time, and they're awaiting the behind the wheel training. The first behind the wheel training is scheduled for October 15th through the 18th. Please remember that only 2 TAs at a time, or 2 employees at a time, can drive to get their license. The second behind the wheel training is scheduled for October 21st through the 24th. And then the next scheduled classroom training is November the 4th through the 7th. There will be a mixture of drivers in the classroom training, and that will equal to a total of 23. We have 3 that need to retake the class. We have 10 coaches who are in need of their license and 10 TAs who need to be licensed. One of the things that Mr. Byer has been able to share with me is that in his conversation with the gentleman who's responsible for doing our training, he feels that he's going to be able to give Nash County Public Schools more attention this year because the other charter schools and school districts that he's working with, he feels like they're in pretty good shape, so he'll be able to spend more time in Nash County Public Schools, and hopefully we can get most of the people trained who we need trained. Once TAs have been fully licensed to drive, we will add buses to our elementary schools or anybody who's licensed to drive. We will add them to our elementary routes, and this will relieve the strain on drivers having to drive for high school, elementary, and middle. This will also help with us getting individuals to school on time and help with getting middle schoolers home on time. As I shared with you all in our last update, please remember that there are a lot of our drivers who drive for high school in the morning, then they turn around, they run an elementary route, and then they turn around and run a middle school route. And so it's the middle school who's feeling the brunt of it. We do have some instances where our elementary schools are feeling some of it, and sometimes some of our high schools, but most often it's the middle schools that's having the heavy impact. Is Mr. Byer here? Mr. Byer, you come talk about where's the bus at? Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So we personally delivered 2,500 flyers to all the elementary students. There was roughly 2,500 students that were loaded on the bus on September, get my dates mixed up, I'm sorry. But it was the September 13th, I think it was. So as of today, we have 697 actual households and over 1,000 students assigned to the bus, or where's the bus at? So far, I haven't heard any bad results on it, any bad comments through any social media. We're pushing it out social media at least once a week again, to make sure that we get everybody on the app.
Any questions about the app?
So lost of instructional time. Can you click on that? So we've been struggling still. Anyway, we are still struggling on the lost time. I talked to Miss Watson today, and we're working on, she has 4 buses that are between 30 to 40 minutes late every day. So we had a conversation, Miss Morris had a conversation with her today, and she gave us some suggestions, and I told her the first thing we need to do is get them buses that she wants to move children to, get them accurate. Because right now, if we just move what she's telling us to move, there's just way too many students on the bus. And when we send our reports to DPI, they're gonna question it. So we need to get the accurate number first, and then we can start moving students. We're gonna have to do another student count since we had bad weather last week on Friday. They gave us an option of doing it all over again or just making up Friday. Dr. Farrell talked, and the suggestion was to give the drivers a list of students and start marking them off rather than just counting which ones are on there. So this is the removal process, and we'll be able to go faster on removing the students. Because I know there's not 7,500 students on there. But we've done that so we wouldn't, so the beginning of the year, we wouldn't have so many phone calls. Because you could tell these parents to sign up, but they're not gonna sign up. But anyone else has any questions on anything? If you scroll down to the totals, you see we're getting a little bit better, but we're still, it's way too many hours. First week, we had 3,400 minutes missed. Second week, 1,550, and then third week is 14. I haven't finished up that's as far as I got so far.
So the middle school routes, it's because they're running triple bus loads.
Correct.
That's it, okay.
Did you say you track the number of students that's riding the bus? Did you track the number of students that's riding the bus?
Yeah, we have a list of each bus and a list of students per bus.
So, and fresh my memory again, how do you say you're tracking those students?
Oh, right now, the count is to count the students that are on the bus.
And a manual count?
Mm-hmm. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually cross off the students that are not on the bus. So we'll have a sheet of paper saying, okay, these students no longer ride, so we can have something to remove. DPI just asks us to count the students on the bus. We're going a little bit further, and we're gonna mark off the ones that are not riding.
So what happens each year is the DPI sends out to all school districts to do their, is it called TM report, Mr. Butter?
TD2.
TD2 report.
The student count report.
And what DPI is asking is that they're trying to ask for an accurate number of students on the bus. So they give you an entire week for all of your all of your schools to count the number of students who are on each bus in the morning and who's on each bus in the afternoons. And then when you turn that report in, then they come up with a number based on the information that you've given them about the number of students that's riding the buses. And that's where your funding comes from. And so that's why it's incredibly important for all school districts, but I'm speaking about us, is that we have an accurate account of who's on those buses because it impacts funding from the state. And so what Mr. Byer and I have talked about is just instead of just counting students, because you could have kids who are just hopping from bus to bus if someone is not paying attention. We need to know who's supposed to be riding that bus and if that individual is actually riding that bus. And so we've solicited the help of the schools to make sure that they are helping us in that process, because we want to make sure that every kid who wants to ride the bus is on the bus, but we also want to make sure that we have accurate numbers.
We don't have, I'm sorry. Ms.
No,
Willis.
go ahead.
We don't have, our students don't have ID cards, do we?
I think some schools may have them, but
Have you
Not
ever
as a-
thought about scanning on
With
side
this-
the bus?
With this new app, that's what I looked into, and they have RF readers.
Yep.
So
So you
if we want to go that way,
systematized.
of course it's gonna cost more money, but we have the option now with the new app.
I guess when I'm asking the question, the software you have, if it's the right software with RFD scanner, it's just, you can tap back into your software. but
everything costs money.
Until it goes to the
That's
southern
cards
side
ain't
where you
cheap.
can't get in
It
it.
all
Buy
costs
them every
money.
day, they ain't
But
cheap.
Mr. By, it is a conversation that Mr. By and I have entertained, that we've looked at, but at the end of the day, it's an additional cost. And right now, we're really working hard to try to get people on buses so that they can drive.
If I may, I got a recommendation for you. I can talk to you afterwards regarding how we should do it inside our private sector. We create our own barcodes. I mean, you don't have to do that. I mean, it's just a matter of scanning on the bus. But I'll talk to you about it.
Okay. Thank you.
We used to have barcode.
Yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
Yeah, you should create your own.
My question is, who's gonna do the checking off these students on the bus?
So what we've asked the drivers to do is, because the drivers are familiar with the students at this point who's on the bus. So as the students are getting on, when they're parked on campus, when they're getting on, then they should be, and this is in the afternoon I'm talking about, they should be marking who's getting on the bus. In the mornings when they're picking them up, what we're asking the individuals at the school to do is to go and make sure that the driver has had an accurate account of who's on that bus. Because we know when you're picking them up in the morning, you don't have the ability necessary to sit there and check off. So we're asking the people in charge of buses at the schools to make sure that they're helping in that process, that we have an accurate account of who's on the buses.
Okay,
And
that's,
I'm not gonna say that that's the way that it works at every school, but that's what we're asking people to do.
all right, because my concern would be how accurate that count would be if it were dependent upon the bus driver to do it, even though that driver may know the kids on the bus. There's always that possibility that a group of kids could get on the bus and that driver miss one of the students. That would be my concern with that.
And that's the reason DPI have you do it over a 5-day count, is so that you're
And then you
you're
add.
getting an average, yes ma'am,
Oh, okay, okay,
yes ma'am.
thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions? All right, thank you, Dr. Farrell and Mr. Byer for the information. So at this time, I'll return.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas Bullock. And our final committee to convene is the Academic Services and Accountability Committee. Mr. Lamb,
I'd like to call the roll. Dr. Washington,
here.
Ms. Vincent,
Here.
Sharonda Bullock,
Here.
Bill Sharp.
Here.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes. Motion made by me, second by Mr. Sharp. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. Request for research for information only, Dr. Mudd.
Good evening, members of the board. We have one request for a study for us to participate in, conducted by DPI through NC State University. The information is in there. It's on advanced teaching roles in our Opportunity Culture program. Any questions? Thank you.
CTE Nursing Assistant Memorandum of Understanding. Ted Thompson.
Good evening, board.
Hey.
So each year we bring to you the CTE Nurse Aid program. We have to have a site where nurses can train in order to receive their certification. So we have 3 MOUs today. One being Breckenridge that deals that Northern Nash and Nash Central will utilize. Wilson Pines for Southern Nash High School, and the landings of Rocky Mount for Rocky Mount High School. And the superintendent submits this for approval.
Any questions from Mr. Thompson? I entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sharp, second by Mr. Visit. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. But I was looking. Anyway, it's approved.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Field trips, Mr. White.
It's like a silent bid.
Saw the hand before.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We have one field trip that's requesting approval. It's Northern Nash Band. 43 students are attending a competition in Bassett, Virginia on October 19th, returning on the 20th. There are 2 male chaperones and 4 female.
I will entertain a motion to approve the field trip. Motion by Mr. Sharp. Second.
You do this.
Second by Dr. Washington. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed likewise. Any more comments for the Academic Services Committee?
I do have a question.
Okay?
And this is just for Mr. White, just given the weather that we've had recently, is there a plan when we go on these field trips in terms of like emergency? I know we have like contact information, but do we have a plan going when we go into different areas with how we should handle weather emergencies? And I just ask that in the wake of all the things that are going on and I'm working with different counties across the state and looking at the devastation. So I just wanted to know that, or if that's something that we may kind of take a look at.
So you're asking, do we have a plan in case we have an emergency?
Right, during field trips. So I know, we're going into all, across the United States in different areas and states. And I just want to know, is there some plan when we go into those spaces ahead of time? Let's say, students are traveling to Norfolk for whatever, for band competition. Do we ever come up with a plan or an idea of, okay, in case of an emergency? I think I just looking at the weather recently, and again, having worked with counties across the state, I think it's something that we should maybe kind of consider, as we make plans with field trips in mind.
Yes, ma'am. When we know that we have individuals who are out on field trips, we try to be mindful of the weather, especially if there have been any given alerts that there may be bad weather in an area where we are trying to keep track of that. I remember a couple of years ago, we had a group coming back from the Outer Banks, and there was weather that they were running into. We reached out to them to make them aware of the weather. Through that conversation, we were able to get them to find a place to pull off for shelter until the weather had passed, and then was able to get back on the road. In those instances, there's a team of us who get together, Dr. Ellis, me, Miss Nancy Smith, her team, Mr. Ward would be a part of that, Mr. Byer, Mr. White would be a part of that. We're having a conversation with law enforcement, emergency management, and then we're making contact with the principal or whoever it is that's on that field trip. So we are aware of when people are going out of the district to field trips, and we are mindful of weather. And so I don't know that there's a plan that's written out per se, but there are steps that we have to address the issue if one should happen to come about.
Perfect. Thank you. That's exactly what I was asking, just the process. It's just some things that I was a part of, and I just kind of made me a little nervous and thought I should just ask and bring it up so that we make sure that we are proactive. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
There was one such team assembled Thursday at 6:30.
Any other comments or concerns? If not, I will adjourn the Academic Services and Accountability Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. At this time, if there's no further business to come before this board, I will adjourn. Thank you all. Have a great evening.